And so I know there's, there is a place where education can go if you just have the right resources. And
well, I think education is the basis of a state. It's the basis of a community. If you have kids that are coming out of a district that are ready to hit the ground to either go into the workforce and or go on to higher education, then you have done a good service to your state, because a lot of these businesses and stuff are going to be built around the education system. And I get really frustrated watching the commercials on TV about high school is not enough. We need to go to college. Idaho, and they have all these businesses on that came from out of state here, planted themselves, and they say we can't just hire high school graduates. We need much more. But they have outpriced higher education for children in Idaho to the point where, and I'm going to be honest here, I did foster care for a number of years. All of my foster children were eligible to go on to college through grants and scholarships. The very wealthy can go. You know who can't go? The middle class. And there's a lot of bright kids here and here, but there's a lot of them right down the middle who are being outsourced. They cannot go because they cannot afford it. And as money keeps being, see, I'm not just a proponent of K-12. Idaho's education system can go on forever. And if we don't recognize that and we don't start getting candidates who understand that and that can talk to people, because I think most people are pretty reasonable. They just don't have the facts. And until we can get people out there that can give them those facts, then we're in the same spot. There's a couple of senators from southeast Idaho, I believe, who are now saying they feel that they need to add to that requirement that every high school student that graduates has at least 2 college classes behind them. And that's great. A lot of kids in this high school do. But the child that's struggling already, we're saying we're not going to graduate that child. Maybe he's not going to go to the University of Idaho or University of Washington or wherever. But he's a smart, bright kid, and who's going to fix my car if that kid doesn't get into diesel mechanics? Or who's going to take care of my breathing problems if they don't go to school to be a respiratory therapist? You cannot just look at this narrow view. You have to be able to say every kid is not the same. Look at your own kids. My 3 kids are so different, it's unbelievable. You know, they didn't fit into any cookie cutter, and nobody's outdo. So we need to provide for all the kids. It's great to have those aspirations. It's great. But you have to educate all children in Idaho and not leave anybody behind. One of the things with the new pay for performance is parental input, which I have nothing against parental input when you are ready to evaluate a teacher. However, how many in this room have ever decided to go in and call a teacher just because their kid had a good day and they wanted to tell them thanks? There's a problem, and guess who's at the teacher's door? Mom and dad, who said, "How dare you give my son a D? Did you not know he had a wrestling match the other day?" Well, that's not the teacher's problem. Teacher's problem is getting that child taught. So the parental input, while I'm not against it, I think it needs to be weighted somehow with how are we going to go about getting that parental input. And right now St. Mary's is looking at if a teacher during the quarter or semester calls a parent or has contact with them, invites them to a parent-teacher, it's not going to be a committee that I know of. That's something we've steered clear of. It's going to be individual parents that contact the school. Like, how many times has this teacher had contact with the parents? Did she call them? Did she send a newsletter? Did she document when Johnny starts to fail in a class? Did she call this parent? So, and that's how we're going to do right now in St. Mary's, the parental input. Because I, for one, do not believe it can be a parental committee. Then you have a teacher that's a coach and made mom mad, and so she's going to give this teacher a bad evaluation. The bottom line is the buck needs to stop here. And so the evaluations, as they come in, though, well, Joe and the principals will see them, it's my understanding that if there's some kind of a, we should have some say-so in how it goes. and it should be fair and equitable. And I don't think there's anybody seated on the board right now who doesn't agree with that. It has to be weighted. You can't just say, well, you know, Johnny's mother called, she is mad at you. That's going to be a check mark by your name. No, we can't do that. You know, it has to look different, it has to feel different, and it has to be fair to the student. Now, if we have a bunch of parents who are saying, you know, my kid did really well in math in the 5th grade, they're in the 6th grade now, and he's just sinking to the bottom, then maybe that's something Joe or the principals need to look at.
Why is Idaho next to the bottom? We're just above Mississippi.
You know why? Because again, education is not a priority. I sat on a plane one day. This gentleman who's the head of the corrections department, but I happened to be on a plane with him coming from Spokane. I was trying to get to Boise to testify over funding. And we got to talk, and he goes, going down for the same reason I am? I said, yeah, funding. Isn't that always it? And he goes, yeah. He says, you know why I'm going to get more funding than you? And I thought, well, that's a really brazen thing to say to me, but okay, I'll bite. Why? He says, because the taxpayers will look at education and go, oh, those kids are fine, they're up in the school, everything's fine, they're there 8 hours a day, everything's fine. But they don't want somebody getting out of jail and moving next door to them. And so consequently, I have the fear factor and you don't. But he says what has always amazed him, and he was honest, it costs you about $5,000 a year to educate a 14-year-old boy. It costs us $15,000 a year to educate the same kid. And yet, we can't make people understand. And he was in favor. I mean, he supports because if you educate that 14-year-old, he isn't going to end up in the corrections system. He's a very nice man. He gets the disconnect. And the disconnect, folks, is with the voters. The disconnect is with the citizens that don't say, oh, God, I'd rather give money to prison. Don't want that guy living in my neighborhood. We could not have that guy if we would have educated him. And that's where our problems lie, right there. But you talk to people on the street, and I have, and they go, no, 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 my guns. And abortion.
Absolutely.
Have we opened your eyes and looked past those things to what's happening with our state? And until you can find people that can reach that constituency, people that perhaps really love having their guns but also get education, until those are your candidates, that's where you sit. But we have got to start getting people that have an education, that understand what education means, and can articulate that. And you're going to see go hand in hand, whether it's health care, mental health, or education. They all get left by the wayside while we're worried about stupid things. And we're putting all of our energy into that. Start educating children. Start taking care of their health and their mental health. I guarantee you the rest will fall into place. It will.
Maybe what we need to do now is get as organized as possible and gather together as many stakeholders as possible and give input to Boise between now
and the election.
Yeah.
Well, the teachers, by doing that petition, the teachers union, I think they were making, I mean, they got a lot more signatures than anyone believed they were going to get, and a lot quicker. And it wasn't all teachers. There aren't that many teachers in Idaho. No. So my feeling is somebody somewhere besides just teachers is thinking about this and going, what's wrong with this picture? So this might be our window of opportunity is 2012. So you're right, Al. Maybe it's time to start a letter writing campaign and start a campaign to say, look, before this comes, here's why I think this way and here's how it can be changed. We do need to get word out that no, this isn't how Idaho does business. We do business by bringing all the stakeholders to the table, and no, you don't always get your way, but you can at least be heard, and maybe a portion of what you wanted will be in there. And that's how citizens need to do business. Anything other than that is not ethical. It's not ethical. We had somebody in St. Mary's that did a tour of the high school a few years ago. And this person went to school in St. Mary's with my husband. And what he said when he was done was, well, they got plenty of stuff out there. They're fine. We got a good education out there in '67. And my husband's answer was, yes, we did. We got a good education for 1967. And that education would get us very little today. I am proud of the education I got, but it wouldn't suffice for my grandchildren, I can tell you right now. We have to get these children ready for what's out there. We have to get them ready for jobs, for technical school, for college. That's our responsibility. We owe it to them. They are the next citizens of Idaho, we hope. But unfortunately, that's not happening. I do love technology. I'm not as good at it as I should be, but I love it. But I think these kids are going to come from a different place than us.
They do.
And we need to involve them in the conversation. But yeah, to answer your question, Al, I think there has to be citizen committees before the election in 2012 so that people know what for no other reason, that people know what they're voting for or against. I can live with some of the quirky parts of it as long as they're not destructive to the teachers and the students. I can live with some of the weird stuff, like posting every check on the internet and all those. If it directly affects the staff and those students, then they are in a negative way. They're not getting my support. That's all I have to say about that. And look at all the people that backed us. We'll push the envelope a little bit further. They reach a point where people go, whoa, you know, even I or somebody, you know, say, whoa, I'm a conservative, but I'm not going there. And they may have pushed their envelope about as far as they're gonna, because I see a slight shift in Idaho. I saw it in Boise. I've seen it down in the legislature when they're debating. I've seen it at our regional meetings. There's a slight shift taking place, and it's ever so slight, but it may be enough to start a groundswell. And that's what you have to have. You have to work on those people right now that are saying, this is way too much for me. You need to get through to them. It makes it more valid. You know, if I'm out there stomping for this, I don't have an agenda. I don't have some kid that I want to get a free call. I don't have any of that. I'm doing it because I really believe in it. And so actually there should be more credence to someone like you going out and saying, this isn't right, this isn't how it should be. This didn't happen to my kids. Why should it happen to somebody else's? I think it has more weight because of that. I really do. That's why I don't think. That's why I waited till my kids were grown to go on the school board too. I didn't want there to be the assumption that I had an agenda.
How can we get more people involved?
Well, you should use social media and not just Facebook. I mean, I think blogs are good too. I don't have the time for them, but I think they're good. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with the old-fashioned way of doing things. And that is, if you're in a situation, I mean, I'm in a lot of things that don't involve the school district, whether it's church, whether it's some other committee I sit on. I bring to that and book club, I bring to that my passion about education. I don't overdo it and I don't get my friends upset, but I make sure they have the information. If I'm at the store and somebody takes the time to ask me a question, I take the time to stop what I'm doing and answer it. But it's really important because that's the only way word gets out. I think having committees that do reach out, I think having these breakfasts and inviting people to them is an excellent idea. Right now you have like-minded people here, but I really believe that if you keep doing it out of curiosity, people are going to show up. You're going to hit a topic that they want to hear about. And it may be small at first, but just remember, a lot of things start small. This is a great forum. There's a lot of different ways for you to do it, but I think it's going to be, especially in St. Mary's, but I hope that they all know how much I appreciate them. And not just because they taught my children, but because I've watched firsthand what this school district is capable of, and we are lucky. We are very lucky because I have friends on school boards all across the state. That relationship with the teachers is not there. That relationship with the parents is not there. And the trust factor is gone. You can teach kids in a tent. You can teach them outdoors, but without teachers you have nothing.